the number of precarious jobs approaches and in parts of the countries surpasses 1/3 of all jobs. This implies the violation of all three interests of workers or employees: the interest in wages, the interest in employment security, and the interest in working conditions. The Marxian tradition of considering the development of the forces of production, today we would say technical innovation, as technical progress, has been broken. Marx assumed that the development of the forces of production would in one way or another lead to the liberation of workers. And that means liberation as the growing opportunity of workers to escape from the despotism of the work organization, or as he put it, the despotism of factory work. And to do other things, such as fishing, for instance, than performing waged labor. This expectation has turned out to be mistaken. Today, workers have to find employment in spite of the ubiquitous presence of labor-saving technology and process innovations. Growth, although in advanced economies minuscule and unsteady, economic growth and consumerism, the culture of consumerism, have been the great peacemakers of capitalism. And everything that stands in its way has been modernized away. Original and promising visions of how the future of our types of societies could look are, for instance, spelled out by an interesting British group, again in this tradition of British socialism, the New Economics Foundation. They write a well-researched document on the 21 hours a week as the goal of the 21st century. Well, that is a marginal voice in the dominant hegemonic economic discourse. Others have adopted the utopian view of not only stagnation, but fair stagnation. Not only do we not have growth, we do not want growth. We want the present level of prosperity, but the whole problem is a distributional problem. We want the results fairly distributed. Others speak of the social economy, new forms of enterprises, production of goods and services. But these phenomena are all very, very remote voices on the side. It is outside of the dominant discourse of economic policymakers and economic theorists, with a few notable exceptions, such as two recent Nobel Prize winners in economics, Amartya Sen, Joe Stiglitz, and a few other voices that should not be ignored, but that is the present situation. What we have as a dominant tendency is the contractualization of all human activity, and that includes household activity. The extreme example is the commercialization that I've seen in New York and also in Buenos Aires, incidentally, the commercialization of dog walking. what we see as a multifaceted tendency is a deeply unfair responsibilization of people. They have to care for themselves. Interesting quote from my favorite, from Abe Lincoln, who said, if you need a helping hand, look at the lower end of your right arm. Okay, what he meant by this is a polemic against slave owners who thought it is beyond their dignity to do physical labor. Today, this same phrase is being used against the unemployed, right? So the decline of the moral standing of the bourgeoisie can nicely be seen in the change of meaning of one and the same sentence. Or as Mr. Tebbit, the former Secretary of Labor, or Labor Minister of Thatcher's government, put it so nicely, if you are unemployed, get on your bike and look for a job. Okay, the same in the late 20th century version. Individually and collectively, we cannot, or so we are told, afford stagnation, a steady state, something that John Stuart Mill, one of the founding fathers of British social liberalism, took for granted. After a period of growth, the growth process will level off, and a steady state of a stagnant economy with just relations, fair relations of production would take over. The basic antithesis that we deal with in the present discussion on basic income is the antithesis of citizen rights and entitlement on the one hand, and that represents basic income, versus contractual rights of workers, entitlements of citizens versus contractual rights of workers. The argument for the basic income, or the entitlement argument, rests on two normative justifications that do not always coincide, and there are interesting tensions between the two. One is, and I could start in the way Philippe did, to ask you the question, raise your finger, what is your favorite normative justification for basic income? I'm not doing that. But one argument is an argument from justice, distributional justice, that goes back to Thomas Paine and all the discussion that followed from this. Another slightly different and perhaps even divergent argument is an argument from freedom. One of the most successful slogans in the German campaign for basic income is the slogan, freedom instead of full employment.